It was staffed with a paramedic and a licensed clinical social worker, and it was a huge success. And I came in August of 2020. And in addition to drinking from the fire hose, learning how to be a 911 director, I was also kind of placed in this position of stewardship over the 911 portion of dispatching clinicians and civilians to certain 911 calls.
So what was the impact? I don't think I had realized that planning started so far in advance of 2020. And then you've got George Floyd in 2020. So how did that impact the original design or buy-in?
That's an excellent question. No, it really is. So again, not having been there for a lot of that work, I don't know what that looked like in the moment. What I can say is that the ripples of a post-George Floyd world were still felt even into 2021 and 2022 after I had joined the city. One of the first things that happened was that the STAR program, though it was successful, a lot of the community voices that had been instrumental in getting it off the ground, that had pushed the police department to do something like this, the police department said, great, yeah, let's do it. Those same community voices after the program launched said, okay, hey, we really love this, but we don't want it associated with police at all. We don't want it associated with public safety. And they lobbied to city council to remove it from the Department of Public Safety. And which to me, again, coming in from the outside, was a little bit frustrating because what I saw was in a country where we were having a long overdue conversation about policing in the United States. And there was a lot about reimagining policing and kind of creating a better, more sustainable model. You had a police department like the Denver Police Department that not only were willing to do something differently, but were passionate about it and were advocating for it outside of Denver. And, then the city kind of goes, well, yeah, that's great, but we're going to take it away from you. So the program was moved into our Department of Public Health and Environment, which was a struggle. Our Department of Public Health didn't have much, if any, experience with a field response.
Totally different.
Right?
Yeah.
And so totally different. And even to this day, we run into, that relationship with our Department of Public Health has improved by leaps and bounds. And we're in a much better place today than we were in 2021. But even today, they still on occasion forget that these folks, they work holidays. They work outside of normal business hours. They work weekends. So it's a different mindset coming from public safety and going into public health. So it's been one of the challenges.
It's really frustrating from an observer perspective because here you had this perfect opportunity. You had enthusiastic, willing law enforcement that are the masters of field response and 911 response, right? Crisis response, willing to collaborate with clinical professionals that, it's sort of you have to, when you step back and we see this all over the country where the old school law enforcement, when you go to the police academy, you're sort of trained to think differently. You're trained to detect threats in any environment because police officers are going to go into threatening environments. And so what happens is you have this hypersensitivity to threats. And so then when it's proposed that, we're going to send unarmed folks into crisis situations, the guttural sort of law enforcement response is, oh my gosh, there could be a threat there, and what would you do? Okay, so that's sort of foundationally what has been one of the biggest problems across the nation in terms of integrating the correct crisis response given the circumstance. And in Denver, you had a police department whose leadership was enthusiastic and willing to engage in a collaborative effort in this regard, and the officials decided to move it somewhere else. That's just so frustrating to me because it could have been so beautiful, but it wasn't.
Well, it was for a minute. So Andrew knows this story. When I arrive on the scene, what I had heard from our electeds and there's some admin in City Hall saying, oh, you should look at Denver. Denver's the model. And when you invited me down, I have always been grateful because it had already converted to that third-party outsourced model.